what's going on. Boys, arm yourselves. Life stuff. We've been thinking about a few things. Firstly, I want to understand Anhero better. Because I think there is more to that act than there appears to be. As in, what if it is like a black hole? Maybe with an imperceptible event horizon. Is this a choice people make right at the very end, or is it a path people get locked into that may not be obvious at first? Are there dead men and women walking? The decision, if it is a decision, has already been made. And if it isn't a decision necessarily, and it is imperceptible or hard to perceive, is it something you catch like a disease or like a virus that progresses? For example, are you terminally depressed? Is there a stage 4 danger zone depression? And if it isn't a decision at the very end, but instead an organic and hard to comprehend process, what does it feel like when your body is moving you toward that destination? Or does it work like nausea? Something biological, chemical, but it's like a momentum thing. You can feel nauseous and know you aren't going to vomit and you don't need to vomit, but you still feel that vomit urge. You are in vomit realm, you're in vomit territory, but you haven't stepped in, and you don't need to at the moment. But then there's nausea. You know what's coming. You aren't at stage vomit now, but you know you will be. And biologically, there is very little you can do to stop that feeling once it's come on. Is that how Anhero works? Or one of the ways it can work? I think it might be. Because for every instance of someone moving on with no apparent signs, there are just as many cases of that process being very externally visible. People becoming or looking, showing up to work, really sick, leave out of nowhere, and then what happens happens. We're trying to figure this out because that shit is terrifying. The idea that it might not be a decision, but rather a push. And that leads us into thinking about defenses against these things if it is the organic ladder. I remember going off about a few things during my episode. My scared embarrassment. One of the things about that bothers me before we get into nationalism. I don't understand why part of my lower consciousness seems convinced I'm gay and I should be harmed for that. Maybe it does tie in well with the nationalism, actually. I don't get it. But the fact that came up means it's important, but I don't know what to do with that. And I think I bring this up because I'm trying to get something to strike at. Generally speaking, if something sticks out, it gets hit. And I think one of the reasons I make videos at all is the more I verbalize things, the stickier they get, and the more auxiliary ideas stick to them. It's like speaking them unwraps the wrapper, and then air can get in. And I think this is a major thought for the thought cabinet, and I want to get passive unconscious mind working on it now. And I say thought cabinet because I know I was talking about Disco Elysium. God, it feels like I play this game once a year and then it hijacks my mind for a month. And there's something new every playthrough I'm finding. I didn't even realize you could see Joyce off as it were. You could resolve that. I had no idea for any of the previous playthroughs I've done. Never done that before. And I had just wrapped up a fascist playthrough with a physical mental Harry. And that was interesting, pairing physical and mental, because I think people typically pair emotional and physical, and then mental and motorics. Anyway, you can play Fascist Harry as more focused on the spirit of the nation than on racism. But you can be somewhat racist. On my Disco Elysium racism scale, I would say in my last playthrough, we were at about a 3, which I think is an interesting level of racism. Now, when you are a physical Harry, the city speaks to you. And when you're fascist, that spirit of the city is a little bit fashy. Sort of the way Lillian is a little bit fashy. Not overtly, but detectably. And in developing emergency strategies to keep your brain patched up, to keep your brain floating, I looked for delusions I know to be delusions, but that don't feel that way. Defenses so strong or so ingrained that even when you know they shouldn't be protecting you rationally, they are still going to operate and try to protect you. And I found American identity is one of those for me. I hate my nation. I hate my state. I hate my people. I hate our deceptive, hypocritical founding. I hate our founding fathers. And between personal feelings and the facts, I hate them personally and impersonally. I especially hate that the rule of law and justice generally doesn't exist. And I can look at all this, and I can know it, and I can feel it, viscerally. But I still know. Scrimshawed into my bones know that I am an American, and I am better than you for it. And I love my country, and I love my people. I love our history. I love everything that we were, we are, and we can be. My patriotism is a delusion so extreme, the most vigorous rationality might be able to suppress it, but it'll never kill it, even with everything I've experienced. Now, I watched some Ryan Chapman videos about fascism, and he tries to, or he does, essentialize fascism into one sentence. Now, he based his definition on 3 words, but he expanded it into what he thinks captures the essence of fascism better. But in my mind, those 3 words work a lot better. Blood and soil. Now, the reason I bring up Ryan Chapman at all, instead of just getting into blood and soil, is he mentions something, or discusses in a different video, something unique about the American identity. In that, in American populism, or in American identification, where another country or an older country would use blood straight, blood to mean blood in the ethnic, racial sense, American identity uses subtle political similarities more than it does blood. Perhaps more than Americans realize. Like St. O'Neill says, he didn't learn to be an American until he got outside America. You don't realize how much you have in common with your countrymen until you put yourself in cultures whose thinking is totally different. Not to mention probably, if not racially pure, quotes, then with an idea of racial purity. So, how does blood and soil work if, as an American, you don't really have a blood per se? If you are fashing for the new Colossus idea of America, which we are, well, I think there are a few magical continents on the planet: North and South America and Africa. So, as United Statesians, and we're including, or we will include, South America a bit more later. For right now, we're focusing on the United States. As United Statesians, this isn't the land that birthed us. Unless you're Native American, technically, but I would argue contemporary Native Americans are in the same shit, so there's really no distinction. And that's what I mean by this land didn't birth us. This land is where we got in the shit. And I think that's what unites us. Mystical shit. We are percolating a new blood on a stage dripping with mysticism and potential. Drenched in history. Not history past, but history to be made. And this is where it's confusing and interesting, because I don't know if other people feel it. Not just Americans, but anyone of any nationality. Do you feel the spirit of your nation in your blood? I despise my state, I despise my people, but I love my nation, whatever that even means. I feel it in my blood, regardless of how I feel or what I think on a mental or emotional level. I'll never be anything different, and I don't want to be. I want every American to be the happiest, most successful person on the planet. Not out of altruism or even camaraderie, but as an order of things. Americans are born with brilliant souls, and anything less is a travesty. That an American might be anything less than happy and successful is an insult to God. And I continue to include South America in this, because in a twisted version of the blood and soil sense, I think what makes our blood brilliant is our soil. There is some uniting essence here that makes us different from and better than any other people on any other landmass. And it kills me that we target each other when there is an entire world out there to target instead. There are rivers of stubbornly irrational continental superiority raging through my soul. This feeling that every single one of us deserves the best because we are the best. And the superlative is important there. It's not just excellence, it is being more excellent than some other stupid people from a much older and more subservient culture. You send us your tired and your poor, and we will turn them into your superiors. And these are feelings that I am used to repressing, because when you are being realistic, so easy to see that America is diseased, it's hypocritical, it was never anything good, so on and so on and so on. All true. And nothing is going to undo my experiences with our state. That is never going away. But even despite all of that, I still feel this something of American nationalism. I'm realizing it's not even any one specific thing, any one specific event. It is just this idea of greatness of capability and greatness of achievement springing out of Americanism. Now, people act like Disco Elysium is commie propaganda. It is. But it's also too honest and I think too correct to pigeonhole it that way. Because most all the characters, important characters, are nationalist for Revachol. Now, that love gets interpreted differently, but one of the consistent factors between all these different political ideologies dealing with this bit of land, this city, this nation, is this attachment to the genius loci of the nation, the spirit of the nation, if not the blood of the nation. Even though I think the spirit and the blood are the same thing, can be. Kim is a good example here. Nationalism is, I would argue, a pillar of Kim's identity, but they frame this nationalism differently with each person. You hear nationalist, you think fascist or at least right wing. But that is not the case. All these people understand and adore the spirit of Revachol differently like a god, but they all do it. Meaning, I think if you live in a spiritually charged, historically important land, even if that history hasn't happened yet, there is some protective unifier operating there. And I think it originates in the soil. The soil attracts and breeds its own blood according to its needs. And I think that could be a defense against unfiltered reality and its consequences. Your identity as a member of this superorganism, or at least your select individualized place within it, is so intense you can know it shouldn't work and it still will. I think your nation could irrationally love you as much as you irrationally love it. If you feel that love, your nation will protect you, protect your mind and your soul, at least while you're alive, from the flaying winds. Maybe. Maybe I was just looking for reasons to shit-talk Europeans, which I didn't do in this video as much as I wanted to. I think if you're in I don't want to be dead mode, then your soil and the brilliant blood it cultivates in you, blood that you share with everyone in your nation, and it is already factually protecting you even when you don't want it or tried to deny it, like there was something wrong with your nation wanting to protect you, even when your state does the opposite. That is not a bad thing to believe in. It is a beautiful, loving contradiction. And Deus Ex, that AI you can find in the Illuminati place. God was the dream of good government. Maybe this nationalism you feel when you have no reason to is a loving God in some degree. Or maybe it was some deep, deep psyop that just so happened to have some positive benefits. I'm not sure. For now, love of nation that doesn't reflect the state, and people who don't reflect the people, is making my soul feel shielded. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.